In this video, I will explain how to write a good introduction for a paper, because in many instances the new researcher or students doesn't know what to write into the introduction. The introduction serves the purpose of a justification why you do this study. Tell people what is going on in this particular field under this topic, and where is the research gap, what is your justification to validate this study will be necessary, and tell people what is your basic hypothesis or the aim of your study. In terms of the scope, the introduction should be very focused, relatively narrow compared to the discussion. Many things you can talk in the discussion, but it may be not appropriate in the introduction. So we're going to talk about it in the next few slides. The structure of an introduction. Number one, you need to introduce the topic. The topic is about the research area. A concise description leads to reader to the point of your research. Therefore, when you talk about the topic, it should not be too broad or too specific. If you're too specific, the reader might not know what it really is about. You might get lost. It cannot be too broad, then you lose your focus. You should be really talking about that topic. Number two, you need to identify the gap in the introduction to justify why you're doing the research. Where is the research gap? You want to fill the research gap. For example, this gap can be a mechanistic study in terms of find exactly the mechanism, which is a knowledge gap, or could it be a clinical problem that you need to point out, or something we do not know. So to do that, you need to build the bridge between the topic and the gap, meaning you need some justification. Justification is a connection between the topic and the gap, which requires the reason and the specificity, why the work is needed. I'm going to give you some examples in the next couple of slides. Finally, in the introduction at the very end, you need to talk about the purpose of the study and what do you want to achieve. The way to write the introduction, you should start something very broad, because that concept is easy to get accepted by the reader. Then gradually you narrow it down to specific details. If we use this triangle to explain what do I mean, then we start with something broad research field. For example, heart disease, depression, etc. Then you gradually narrow it down, then to the point you want to do the research. That's the way to write the introduction. Then you gradually narrow down to details of your study. Here we have an example, a study talking about the beta-glucan attenuates cognitive impairment via gut-brain axis in diet-induced obese mice. Beta-glucan is a dietary fiber, and this can attenuates cognitive impairment. This is what this research want to claim. So let's start with here as an introduction. As we said, you start from a very broad area. It's a neurodegenerative disease, a major contribution to morbidity, etc. So this is a broad area. Then you gradually start to narrow it down. Say, what is the problem? So, no currently curable. What is that? these neurodegenerative diseases are not currently curable. You say, however, Lancet Commission reported that more than 1/3 of dementia cases may be preventable. Now they start gradually see the move towards the preventable, give you a justification, lead to the followings through addressing lifestyle factors including diet. Therefore, this see here gradually you move into the justification. Here's your justification. Now you're talking about the evidence of other people's work about the gut microbiome, gut-brain axis, etc. So gradually lead to the justification to the topic, what do you want to do? Actually, this should follow the finally become the dietary fiber beta-glucan on cognitive function. So in the first paragraph, these authors, actually it's my paper, did not talk about the specific purpose or hypothesis. This normally leads to the end of the introduction. So therefore, you have 4 aspects as we summarize what we have just talked about. Number 1, you started with introduce the research area or the topic with the keywords, linking that into your title of your study. Number 2, you should find the knowledge gap or the problem. Number 3, that will be bring the justification why this is the problem in the field. You bring a bridge between these two and justify why the work is necessary. Then finally you point out the purpose of your hypothesis and your hypothesis of study. I hope that is helpful. Thank you for your attention.